The following opinions are solely those of BoatTEST.com and its test captain.
Hi, Captain Steve for BoatTEST.com, and today I'm on the Greenline 39. Comes in 3 different versions, a standard, solar, and a hybrid. We're on the solar version, and this will allow a cruising couple to stay on the hook or a mooring for months at a time. In fact, the only time we're going to need to see a marina is to provision, and I'm here to tell you that you're going to need food long before you're going to need fuel.
Now, this is the only production brand that offers a hybrid option. That will allow an owner to alternate between the diesel and an e-drive to power the boat. Now, this isn't so much for use as just a range extender, but more to use whenever in slow cruise mode, no wake areas, things like that. Places where you don't want to be running your diesel without putting a load on it. So that makes your main engine more efficient since it will only be operating at speed, and the E-unit gets run off of batteries that are charged by the solar panels on the overhead. Now again, hybrid is offered as an option, and while this boat was not equipped with it, it does have the solar features negating the need for shore power and being tethered to a dock. Everything runs off of rechargeable batteries and an inverter. As for her performance on diesel power, let's take a look. The Greenline 39 Solar has a length overall of 39 feet 6 inches, a beam of 12 feet 4 inches, and a draft of 2 feet 11 inches. With an empty weight of 16,580 pounds, 26% fuel, and 3 people on board, we estimated our test weight at 17,477 pounds. With the single 370 horsepower Yanmar diesel running up to 3550 RPM, we reached our top speed of 22.4 knots. Best cruise while planing was measured at 2800 RPM and 16.1 knots. It was at that speed that the 10.8 gallon per hour fuel burn translated into 1.5 nautical miles per gallon and a range of 248 nautical miles. Of course, this is a cruising boat, so if the speed is pulled back, her range opens up significantly. Drop her down to 8.5 knots, and the range extends to 448 nautical miles, and at 6.5 knots, she'll go for 967 nautical miles, all while still holding back a 10% reserve of the boat's 185 gallon total fuel capacity. Now, what's significant about these numbers is the fact that we got them in roughly 4-foot seas, clearly not where we were shooting this footage. And in actuality, 2 other tests we were scheduled to conduct that day canceled due to these conditions, but not Greenline. Even more impressive is the fact that when they conducted their own performance evaluations in perfect conditions, their results were surprisingly close to what we got here. At 3,800 RPM, they got 25.1 knots, just 2.7 knots faster on the flat over our results. Now, we didn't get the same top RPM, so let's look at where we did get the same. At 3,400 RPM, they got 20.9 knots at 15.3 gallons per hour. We got 21 knots at 17.7 gallons per hour. At 2,600 RPM, they got 13.9 knots at 7.8 gallons per hour. We got 14 knots at 9.9 gallons per hour. So we're consistently getting roughly the same speeds, but pushing a little harder to reach the same RPM in our rough conditions. That speaks volumes about how sea-kindly this hull is. While on the flat though, we reached planing speed in 6.6 seconds and hit 20 miles per hour in 10.8. Now, with that plumb bow and lack of flare, we were naturally getting soaked. It's the nature of the design, but more importantly, we never pounded. It was always just a clean slice through the seas. Overall, this is definitely a cruising boat made for offshore work, and she lives up to the challenge quite nicely. Back at the marina, this boat with her single engine is extraordinarily maneuverable. Tight confines are no concern as she'll respond quite well to the rudder at low speeds. Plus, the thrusters can provide more than enough power to bring the bow or stern in as needed. But the best part is the opening side door allowing a full view of the starboard side and easy access to that midship cleat, making it easy to tie her up single-handed. We had an equally easy time backing her into a slip with a bit of a crosswind, trying but failing to complicate matters. So now that we're back at the dock, let's look over some of her operational features.
In both of the stern quarters, there are bollard-style 12-inch cleats leading out to stainless steel chafing gear. Just under the cockpit deck, inside 2 hatches, 5 kW generator. There is an underwater exhaust, and I've got easy access to the through-hull fitting for the water intake. There's a ball valve right at the intake. All the hoses are double clamped. I'd like to see edge guards on the hose clamps. Now just behind, I've got clear access to the steering gear and the hydraulic steering system. And it's a single rudder with a single prop. Old school has its advantages. All I have to do is undo this deck plate, And now I've got an emergency steering tiller that can be placed onto the rudder stock, and now I can steer the boat in an emergency.
Forward, the windlass leads to a stainless roller recessed into the tow rail and a small pulpit. Road access is just to starboard, and inside the hatch is the remote for the windlass. To both sides are cleats mounted on top of the cap rail, directly adjacent to chafing gear. The bow rail opens for bow end docking.
In the main salon, we've got the engine room hatch, and it's opened with turn and lock latches. Once it's open, take a look at this. Single Yanmar 8V 370 horsepower engine. Taking a look around the engine room, fully forward, there's the hot water heater. On both sides, we've got fuel tanks, and notice at the bottom of the fuel tank, there's a valve connected to a hose going all the way across. So it's a crossover. We can fill from one side, and the tanks will level themselves out. I can easily see the raw water intake, the ball valve for the raw water. All the hoses are double clamped. Again, I'd like to see protection on the ends of the hose clamps. There's another intake for the air conditioning cooling. Over on the other side of the forward bulkhead, there's the primary fuel filter. Secondary is right on the engine. Fire protection system, which is connected to these hoses that will melt and then discharge the fire extinguisher into the engine room. And notice the level of soundproofing. All the way back, there's the underwater exhaust for the main engine, and we can also get a good view of the straight shaft connected to the back of the engine. Additionally, the water tanks are behind the fuel tanks, one to each side, and they too are connected with a crossover. Let's take a look at the helm. The upper panel, non-glare, starts with the autopilot, 12-inch Raymarine display, the Yanmar engine display, remote control for the spotlight, trim tabs.
Below is the single engine control, and alongside are the bow and stern thruster controls.
The SimMarine Systems Management display, we'll get into that more in a moment. The engine start stops, and all the electrical rocker switches. Notice the beautifully finished wood steering wheel, stainless steel spokes mounted to a fixed base. Over to the left-hand side, the VHF. Over to the right, the Yanmar backup system. Now let's go back to the SimMarine Systems Management panel. It's pretty cool. Right here it's giving us a readout of our engine start batteries, our house battery, our bow and stern thruster batteries, fuel, fresh water tankage, and a barometer so we can have a trend of the weather. Now what's interesting is all these batteries are at 100%. Understand that we've been on this boat all day with all of the lights burning, the refrigeration going, the air conditioner going, and the batteries are still at 100%. That's because we've got 4 300-watt solar panels on the roof that are constantly putting a charge into these batteries. And we've only had one air conditioning system going all day long, and that's 16,000 BTU. If we had 2 of them at 16,000 BTU each, that would probably start to bring the batteries down a little bit, but we're in South Florida, sunny day, constant stream of sunlight going into these solar cells, and it's keeping those batteries up. So this is why I say you're only going to have to go to a marina for provisioning. Just below, there's a comfortable footrest, and take a look at this. We can flip down the panel to reveal not only storage behind, but when we flip down the bolster on the double wide helm seat, it makes it that much more comfortable for sitting at the helm. Now, as nicely laid out and comfortable as this helm is, I do have one favorite feature, and that's got to be this side door. Not only does it provide excellent ventilation, but it makes it so easy to single-hand this boat. One thing I'd like to see change though is this piece of wood that comes down here. I have hit my head on it over and over again all day long. It definitely needs to come up and be a lot narrower. And I have to say I'm very impressed with the visibility from the helm. For starters, out the huge single-piece windshield. In fact, the only thing that's interrupting the visibility is behind us, the refrigerator and a panel at the aft galley, but we can overcome that by looking out the side door. Just below the helm seat, stereo with USB connectivity. Underneath, the ship's main electrical panel that includes the 3 battery switches. We also have the inverter control panel here that allows us to control how much of a charge is going into the batteries from the solar panels. If we're on the boat and using a lot of electronics, air conditioning, refrigeration, we turn the charge way up. If we leave the boat, we turn the charge down and we have a trickle charge going into the batteries. We can also move the switch over to shore power so that we can run all of the electrical systems on shore power and just use the inverter for the battery charger. Now, just in front of the helm seat, there's a hatch that leads to a compartment that houses the inverter.
The Greenline 39 Solar is an impressive boat, both from her performance and handling aspects, as well as the fact that she can be fitted with a hybrid propulsion as an option, the only production boat offering this. That will significantly extend the range, and since we're primarily using that E-unit when the diesel would otherwise be idling, we're saving on the main engine's maintenance by only using it under load. An interesting and cost-effective scenario. And that's my full test and performance evaluation of the 39 Solar from Greenline. For BoatTEST.com, I'm Captain Steve. We'll see you on the water.